back live on Too Much for Much with Marilyn Manson, who is in the house. There's lots of people outside who can't get in. We fit as many people as we can inside. Do you love it, beautiful people?
Oh, yeah.
Do you love it?
Very much.
Do you love it?
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
No, don't love it at all.
All right, 3-1. That's decent. There is a way for you to get involved in this conversation, and I sincerely hope that you will join us on Too Much for Much tonight. You can call us, you can fax us, or you can email us. If you want a telephone, the number is 1-800-265-MUCH. If you want to fax us, it's 1-416-591-MUCH. And if you want to do the cyber thing, it's too much at muchmusic.com. We'll keep putting those up throughout the show. It's an interactive show. We have way too many people to get to already. And so what I'm going to do is right now, I'm going to take a little break, get your questions prepared, get your passionate speeches ready to deliver, and we're going to hear more from Marilyn and a bunch of people that we've asked to come down and talk with us when we come back.
Listen carefully.
You know those guys that were on before?
Too Much for Much with Marilyn Manson. I just want to quickly introduce you to some of the people that we've asked to come down and talk with us tonight, and then we can get this free-for-all going. First of all, in the right corner, Greg Quill is a writer for the Toronto Star. He writes about television. He's been a music fan for a long time, and he also has kids. That's Greg. Welcome, Greg. Over here is Lynn Crosby, who's teaching at the University of Toronto. She's also a poet. Lynn has done some serious writing and marinating in the whole realm of serial killer culture, and I'll be bugging her about my choice of words later. That's Lynn Crosby. Next to Lynn is Mark Kingwell, who also teaches at the University of Toronto. But don't worry, there are no quizzes at any time in the show. Mark is also a TV writer for Saturday Night Magazine, and he's written a book about the millennium. So we'll get the millennial angle from Mark. Next to Mark is Tim Hoff, who is a frontline street worker working with street kids, dealing with substance abuse and other issues of the street. Tim is also a rock and roller in his own right, plays in a hard rock band, and word has it that he's a Christian, but don't be afraid. I know that's a very fearful crowd. Next to Tim is Chris O'Connor. You may have been offended and inspired by his writings in the weekly I Magazine. Chris is also a recovering goth, and we'll get to that. Actually, why don't we get to that right now?
Get to it right now?
What's a recovering goth? What's your experience with this?
Okay, what is a recovering goth? Well, first of all, I might point out that I still have the markings to prove it. Okay. Yeah, I was, there's different substrate of what a goth is. I mean, I was sort of into an older kind. I was really fascinated by stuff like The Birthday Party and Diamante Galas and the Swans. And I think eventually, though, I just got really tired of looking at the world through my own scar tissue. You know, everything just kind of became the same black and blue, and ultimately that kind of solipsism just became kind of boring after a while.
Is that how you feel about the music of Marilyn Manson?
Not necessarily. I want to save that. I want to get that later. I've got arguments about that. Don't worry.
Okay. What are you laughing about, Lynn?
Oh, saving it later again, but which I'd like to do for the whole show, actually.
Lynn's saving the whole show for later. Marilyn, I know you're busy, but who is this guy anyway?
He's just part of my entourage.
Your entourage. Okay. All right. Am I in any physical danger? No.
Not unless you say the wrong thing.
All right, I'll try to say the wrong thing as soon as possible. How do you respond to that angle, that take on your music, that it's seeing the world through your own scar tissue, that there's no hope available in the vision that you?
Well, I don't know if he was directing me directly, but our new record, Antichrist Superstar, is a sort of autobiography. It looks at my own death. It looks at how things relate to society. And there's a struggle between if there's a hope and if there's no hope. And that's really where Antichrist Superstar is, the element of everybody's personality that's nihilistic and, very gothic, and that has no, trust for mankind. And that's a struggle that I go through daily, whether, I think there's a reason to care or if there's no reason to care. So, that's one side of what I do. I think our new record is very, balanced in that it looks at both sides.
I want to just swing over here to some of the people who have come down in a passionate capacity. They're talking about a battle between hopefulness and hopelessness. Is that what draws you to the music of Marilyn Manson? Does anyone have anything they want to add on that?
It's basically just rock and roll, but he's asking questions, and most music doesn't ask any questions. It provides answers, but it doesn't stimulate you to think. And you look at the videos, you look at the music, and they're images which are disturbing and are strange and bizarre and beautiful and weird, but they're asking, what is this? And you don't really have a ready answer. And that's one thing that's disturbing for people because they want answers, and he's not providing them.
I wanted to actually, oops, sorry. Oh, it's a camera. What do you know? I want to throw this down to Greg because asking questions and finding answers is something that you're struggling with in this music as a parent.
Yeah.
What's your take?
Yeah.
What's your take?
It's important to ask questions, and television is a very powerful medium, and videos, of course, are mini movies, which most youngsters take enormous numbers of signals from. But let's not forget that they are basically marketing paraphernalia. And in the grand scheme of things, they're just bits of publicity. They're ads, that allow much music, for example, to exist without having to pay for programming. It's
political points being made early on the show tonight.
But I've watched the videos, but I don't see anything, and I don't hear anything apart from the fact that it's pretty terrible music. But I don't hear anything that I haven't heard before.
Oh, when a ripple goes through the room, I like it when that happens. Mark, just interesting that Greg talks about the marketing of things, and Marilyn talks a lot about subversion of the mainstream, or even taking over the mainstream.
Manipulation
of the mainstream. I wanted to get a take from you on how Marilyn's music fits into that, and see if Marilyn, what he makes of that.
Well, I have to say I agree with Greg about the music, because I think the best song that you recorded somebody else wrote. But quite apart from that, I think...
Oh, you guys were the last 2 minutes outside.
Yeah, I know.
Go on.
But quite apart from that, I think what's interesting about the videos and the lyrics of the songs is the iconography. And I think you mentioned it off the top. The millennial resonance is very strong. You've got clear apocalyptic imagery, the bombed out urban landscape, you've got the marking of the body, and these images that are drawn from the kind of post-nuclear wardrobe of Mad Max and after. So I think this is very interesting. Also, the compression of the icons, Marilyn Manson and the other names of the members of the group. I think this music is distinguished by its cleverness. I think it's cleverer than Alice Cooper by far, which is an obvious comparison point.
All right. Marilyn, how do you respond to being called clever?
I take it as a compliment, but there's different ways you can interpret the music. There's two kinds of people in the world: people who like Marilyn Manson, people who are jealous. So.
Oh, and they like that outside. Hard to believe.
There's only two options.
It's funny though that you've done a lot of critiquing of the mainstream and manipulating of the mainstream, and now you are a big part of it. I mean, you cannot sell 100,000 records, or at least ship 100,000 records in 12 days in a little country of 20 million people, and not become that which you have spent so much time clawing away at. So how are you going to deal with this? You're going to have, people jumping on the bandwagon. You're going to have people who don't get your thing joining the family.
That's the only way you can change things. You can be a small-time person that sits around and complains about things, or you can be a part of it and change what it is. And that's what I've chosen to do. And anybody that thinks that we've sold out or, become something that we didn't set out to be is wrong, because we've always set out to be part of the mainstream, because that's the only way they can change what it is.
It's funny, most artists who try to enter the mainstream go through a lot of struggle, crisis of conscience about how to do that and still maintain the integrity of the work and making sure that the people who are listening to it are actually getting the complicated messages that they're delivering.
We've always just been what we are. We haven't changed for any reason. Luckily, society has caught up with us,
Has society caught up with Marilyn Manson? Let's take a phone call. Save that question for later. Dave is calling from Vancouver. Dave.
Hi.
Hello, Dave.
I was going to ask Marilyn, is your album just a mockery of Christian American culture, or is it actual prophecy? You've made references to Revelations, and in an interview you said it was an actual prediction of things to come.
Heavy-duty question.
I'd say it's both of those. It's, like I said before, it's an autobiography of what I see my life as, and I talk about a lot of things that haven't happened yet. And if you want to look at that as a prophecy, you can, but I'm a big believer in the idea of will to power, and if you want something bad enough, you make it happen. And as far as Christianity goes, Christians are going to see me as the bad guy and as the Antichrist, and that's a role I've accepted. But I see what I do as a positive thing. I'm trying to bring people closer to themselves, that may be further away from God, but that's closer to themselves, and I think that's a good thing. I think that makes people stronger.
How do you respond to that, Tim? Marilyn feels that what he's doing is a positive thing.
I am a born-again Christian. I work with an organization called Youth for Christ, but I've been working on the streets for the last 9.5 years with street youth. And it seems like you're throwing an anchor to people that are already drowning in a lot of ways. My understanding of rock music and being involved myself is that you have the opportunity to be the voice of a generation and a voice to a generation. I think for some segment of the population, you're doing an important job at being a voice of a generation. There's a lot of hurting kids that I know that can relate to that are doing what you do. A voice to a generation, I think you're doing a pathetic job. The lack of hope, the greatest needs in the street are hope, trust, and dignity. And I've studied your stuff pretty closely, and there are no signs of it. You said, just to say, you talked about being afraid. I think darkness is afraid of light, so I wonder how he responds to that.
One of my big points is to say that, if the things that you mentioned, hope and these things, Christianity breeds a lot of weakness in that you're putting faith in something that you can't put your hands on, but I'm trying to tell people to believe in themselves, because that's all that they have to believe in. And I think that that's a positive thing.
Just before we get any heavier into this, I believe that we have to take a break, just a quick one, but we'll be back. And when we come back, I want to talk about cutting yourself up, because that's something that I think a lot of people have responded to. We'll be back on Too Much for Much.